Hi, and welcome to solving equations using inverse operations. For this, we're going to look at quite a few simple equations. Hi, and welcome to solving equations using inverse operations. The equations we'll look at today are going to be equations that are going to crop up in lots of other bits of maths, whether that is solving inequalities, rearranging a formula, solving simultaneous equations, and solving quadratics. Only thing we won't do is anything that uses solving equations with unknowns on both sides. So you won't see anything like this, okay? That will be covered in a separate video. In terms of required skills, make sure you're okay expanding brackets. It's the basic idea. If you've got 2x plus 4, you should know that expands to 2x plus 8. Okay, let's get started. First, let's start really basic. If we have the equation 3x plus 2 equals 11, we're going to go through the method how we solve that. The method we're using is what's called inverse operations. So the idea is you want to get x by itself. First things first, I want to get rid of this plus 2, and we know the opposite of plus 2 is minus 2. So I'm going to minus 2 from both sides. That means my next line is going to be 3x plus 2 minus 2 vanishes, so we leave it blank. So 3x just equals 9. Now, I want x by itself. I've got x being times by 3, so I'm going to want to divide both sides by 3. And if I do that, I get x equals 3. Okay, moving on to a slightly harder example. Here, exactly the same idea. I've got x minus 70 equals 111. The exact same idea. I want to get rid of the minus 70, and the opposite of minus 70 is plus 70. So I'm going to add 70 to both sides. So here x would equal 111 plus 70, which is 181. Okay, so using this method, this is fairly simple, fairly trivial to solve. Last example to go through right now. Okay, next example. We have some natural numbers. We'll use the exact same idea. First step, get rid of the plus 17. Opposite of plus 17 is minus 17. So we minus 17 from both sides. My next line becomes 100x equals 400. Now I've got 100x, so I need to divide both sides by 100. Pause. Rah. I've now got 100x equals 400, so I want to divide both sides by 100. Which therefore tells you that x, or 1x, is going to equal, and this gives me 4, so x is 4. Okay, last example for this section is this one here. We've got two equations that look exactly the same, except for the fact we have one pair of brackets here. So I'm going to solve the simpler one first, the one on the right-hand side with no brackets. This we know what to do. Opposite of plus 4 is minus 4, which means 2x will equal 16. Opposite of times by 2 is divide by 2, so x is going to be 8. For the similar equation on the left-hand side, we do everything exactly the same. However, we must expand our brackets first. So we've got 2x plus 4, we need to expand that. 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 4 is 8. And now we do the same steps we did on the right-hand side. Opposite of plus 8 is minus 8, which means 2x will equal 12. Opposite of times by 2 is divide by 2, so x is going to equal 6. Just make sure for these equations you always do the first step, which is to expand these brackets here. Then it's going to be the exact same as the other equations we've just looked at. Okay, here you've got some equations for you to try. I'd recommend you pause the video now and give it a quick try. Okay, I shall move on in 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, just show me answers for the questions in black are as follows. Okay, so I hope we got those right. Moving on, next idea we're looking at is how we can solve division equations or fractional equations. Equation where you've got some sort of fraction, and again, fractions are the same thing as dividing. So we're going to follow the exact same method as before. We want to get x by itself. this x over 5, you can basically think of it as x is being divided by 5. And the opposite of dividing by 5 is timesing it by 5. So we're going to times both sides by 5. So that would mean we're now going to look at solving division equations or fractional equations. These equations, we've got some sort of fraction. Remember that fractions and divisions mean the exact same thing. So this x over 5 means the exact same thing as x divided by 5. And the opposite of dividing by 5 is timesing by 5. So what we're going to want to do, we're going to want to times both sides of my equation by 5. If I do that over here, I've got a times by 5 and a divide by 5. They're going to cancel out. So I'll just be left with x equals whatever 7 times 5 is, which is 35. Okay, so just going to working out. All I've done actually is I have just basically times these numbers together. We're going to times the bottom number by the number on the right hand side. Same idea for this equation. We've got x divided by 2. So we're going to do 2 times 21, or 21 times 2. That gives us 42, which means x is going to be 42. Slightly harder, but nothing too bad. Now I've got x over 3, or x divided by 3, plus 1 equals 7. First step, I need to get rid of this plus 1. Opposite of plus 1 is minus 1, which means my next line is going to be x over 3 equals 6. And then the opposite dividing by 3 is timesing by 3. So I must do 6 times 3, which tells me that x equals 18. Okay, well done if you got that. Okay, same as before. We have some questions for you to try. Again, pause the video, give them a quick try. I'll go for the answers in 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, answer ones in black are as follows. Hope you got those right. Again, keep in mind for all calculators, keep in mind for all solving equations, you tend to be fine using a calculator. So these numbers here got fairly nasty, even though you could do them all non-calculator without too much trouble. Next thing I want to do today is basically explain how these two equations get solved and how they're slightly different. So we just looked at how to do equations like the ones on the left-hand side. First of all, you get a minus 1, so x over 3 equals 6. And then you're going to times by 3, so x equals 18. This equation over here is different because we have one big fraction. That means the first thing we want to do is get rid of this big divide by 3. Again, the way I always tend to explain it is you want to think what's furthest away from x. Here, there's plus 1's by itself. So our first step was to get rid of this plus 1. Here, this divide by 3's by itself. And these two terms are kind of grouped together. So the first thing you want to do is times by 3. So let's do that. If I do 7 times 3, that tells me that x plus 1 is 21. And then opposite of plus 1 is minus 1. So therefore x equals 20. Okay. So before you move on, make sure you're happy how these two equations are different and how that affects our method. Okay, just one more. I'm going to solve the exact same questions again. But here, rather than x over 3, I've got 2x. Again, doesn't change much, just like 3, you haven't seen it before. So your first step is the same as always. Opposite of plus 1, as we know by now, is minus 1. Then we want to times up by 3. So 2x equals 18. And now we have the only new step. Before we had x equals 18. Now we've got 2x equals 18. So we have to divide by 2. So x is going to be 9. And here it goes through the exact same way. First step is times by 3. So 2x plus 1 equals 21. We're then going to minus the 1. And lastly, divide by 2. Okay. So again, make sure with these questions, you get your first step right. Here we minus 1 and here we times by 3. Okay. Again, some questions to try. So pause and give them a go. Here is questions 1 and 2. And here is questions 3 and 4. Okay, I'll just show the answers for questions 1 and 2. Okay, I'll just show the answers for questions 1 and 2. For question 1, you should have x over 4 equals 5 here, so x equals 20. Now for part B, we should have times by 4 first, and for part B, we should have times by 4 first, and then we plus the 2. Okay. For question 2, first step here is minus 1, so x over 5 is going to equal 10, so therefore x will be 50. And for part B, your first step is to times by 5, so x plus 1 equals 55, so therefore x equals 54. Okay, hope we got those right. Last thing we're doing in this video is when we need to solve equations to get fractional answers. So I'm starting really basic. For this one, you should all be fine that x is going to be 2.5. If you halve 5, you get 2.5. However, once writes as fractions, just because it's a bit easier, it's less easy to work out, and it's still just as good of an answer. Here, we're doing what we always do. Opposite of times by 2 is divide by 2. We want to divide both sides by 2. These 2's cancel out, and we are left with x equals 5 over 2. This we can't solve to get a whole number, so we can just leave it as 5 over 2. Again, I'll just go through a basic identical example in case that helps. If I had 2x equals 7, we will do the exact same thing. Opposite of times by 2 is divide by 2, so divide both sides by 2. These 2's cancel out, so therefore x is 7 over 2. And you don't need to simplify that. Okay, that's absolutely fine for an answer. This one here, you should see the pattern. We're going to divide both sides by 7. So therefore x is going to be 3/7. Okay, this one a bit harder, but enough we can handle. First step, get rid of the plus 11. To do that, we have to minus 11 from the 20. So 4x equals 9. Therefore, x is going to be 9 over 4. And again, it will always be the number on the right-hand side divided by the number next to the x. This number always stays on top, and this number will always go to the bottom of the fractions. Whoosh. Okay, last one I'm doing, just a bit of a weird format, so again, if you don't see it, it can throw you off. First step, I want to get rid of this divide by 3. Opposite dividing by 3, of course, is timesing by 3. So 2x equals 27. And now, just as before, we're going to want to divide that by 2. So x will be 27 over 2. Okay. As always, some questions for you to try. And in a second, I'll go through the answers for questions 1 through to 4. Okay. Just going through those in 3, 2, 1. 0, 0, and here are the answers to questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hope you got those right. That's all we're doing in this video, so thanks for listening and good luck.